Once upon a time, there lived a fish in a pond, and that pond was in a beautiful garden. It was an oasis of life. It was home to 5,000 shades of green and the radiance of all the color palette, for many flowers bloomed there, and many plants and trees took root and called that place home. And so to the north, just off the center, there was a pond in there too. It was one of the jewels of the garden, always a joy to be discovered by those that stumbled upon this vibrant corner. Pond was an oval shape, not too big and not too small. It was man-made, but made with such love that a lot of wildlife came here to be. There were frogs and toads and many insects jumping on the waters, gliding on them like ice skaters. The wind would come and brush on the surface, creating tiny waves upon which bugs would jump and fly off into the humid air to rest their bodies on the white or blue lilies. And right there, underneath the green foliage and the reflecting mirror surface of the pond, lived a fish, an old carp, with red scales and slow moves and eyes that no longer could see but yet held a deep memory of every corner, every shape, every bend of the pond, and every creature that has ever came here to be. And many things have changed with seasons at the pond, but the old carp was always there. And over the time he became so old and so accustomed with the pond that a green algae started to grow on his nose like a long mustache, and small mollusks and underwater snails came to call his scales and body their home. And calmly and softly he let them. He would move every morning up to breathe the air and greet the sun. He'd brush his skin on the stems of the lilies. He'd bow to the insects and play with the frogs. Everybody who lived in the pond loved the carp, and they came to believe that the carp was the soul of the pond itself. And so everything and everyone took turns in tending to the old carp. The smaller fish would clean and brush his green algae mustache. The frogs would remove the snails if there were too many of them, and would jump on his back, massaging it softly with their sticky green paws. Dragonflies sung songs and told stories from the other corners of the garden, and the water lilies provided a lovely space for home for the carp under the waters, cradling him gently and lovingly. And so he would come up sometimes above, swimming to the surface and diving deep to the bottom of the pond, telling the tales of what he learned about the life in this glorious place. And although he never knew anything outside of the pond, he felt himself to be full. His life was full here, and his heart was too. And it was in a hot summer day when one of the younger dragonflies from another corner of the garden flew to the pond. She was very pleased for discovering such a beautiful place. She rested her radiant body after fluttering her luminous wings. And as she did, she noticed that the surface behind her moved. It was the back of the old carp she was on. "Well, hello there," she said. She heard tales of him and was intrigued. The carp stayed still, and sensing the dragonfly on his back, "Greetings," he said, and slowly moved forward. "I heard many tales of you," the dragonfly said. "I've only arrived to the garden not that long ago, for you see I lived outside of it, in the wild. In a place where the winds are stronger, where the sun is brighter, the grasses are taller and the waters are wilder, where one rests in flight and sleeps on the go, for everything moves so much faster there than here." "I wouldn't know of such a place," said Carp. "I lived all my life here in this pond and in this garden." The dragonfly fluttered her wings in amusement. "Huh? Don't you feel that you missed out on your life by never seeing anything else but this tiny pond? I, for once, decided that I'll stay here for a short while and soon will return to the wild, beyond the garden. There's not much to discover here." The carp moved slowly, still allowing her to be on his back, and tiny yellow flowers popped up their heads from the water, gently opening up in greeting to the carp and the dragonfly. Soft wind arrived and swished soft grass near the pond, and everything around whispered. "Can you hear?" the carp asked. "Can you hear the wind and its whispers?" "The wind always whispers," the dragonfly said. "I fly with it all the time, and sometimes, frankly, it speaks nonsense, so I don't burden myself listening all the time. For in the wild there is no time for this. In the wild there is time to move and dance and fly fast and low and far. That is what adventure is." "Adventure is many things," said the carp. "I know not of this wild place you speak of. The more time I spend in this pond, the more I learn to listen to the ground waters that would seep through drop by drop, bringing the tales of those places you speak of. And I heard many birds come and speak of the places they come from far beyond the garden, far beyond the wild that you speak of. And I would tell them of the dripping ground waters and the soft whispers of the wind." The dragonfly was listening attentively. She was curious to find out what else the old carp knew. "It had to be so," the carp continued, "that I had to be born and live in a small pond to find out about real depth. I had to get to know everything and everyone who lives here so deeply and intimately that I understood what depth is. For me it will not be deep oceans or rivers, but it will be the communion and unity with those I love, with those that take care of me and whom I take care of. And that to me, dear dragonfly, is the biggest adventure of my life. Soft and kind and gentle and subtle, and yet my own." He stopped by the green leaf of the white water lily, gently pushing his back close to the edge of the leaf. He let the dragonfly jump on it. "It is time for me to rest," he said. "And if you wish to stay here for a bit longer than today, before you return to the wild, I would very much like to hear your stories of what it's like to be fast, to fly high, and to dance in the wind." He said those words and swiftly moved through the water, diving deeper. His tail glistened in the sunlight. Dragonfly was so touched by the old carp and his simple wisdom and curiosity that something longed in her. She knew that there is something to learn from this animal, and so she decided to stay for a bit longer. As she sat there on the green leaf, she started to hear the soft whispers of the wind too. She resisted jumping into the air and flying high or dancing in it as she normally would do, and instead just listened and felt its warmth. There was much to learn here, in this garden and pond, in this place outside of the wild. And so she decided to stay for a little bit longer.